Hello, my fellow band directors and orchestra directors. You may have a percussion section that you're thinking to yourself, why do they sound so messy? Maybe they're doing a great job, but you just can't get them to clean it up and sound really precise, accurate, and just polished. What can we do about this? In this video, I'm going to go over 5 of the biggest reasons why percussion sections tend to sound messy. And then I'm going to tell you what to fix first. Let's get right into it. The number one reason why percussion sections tend to sound sloppy is because the players are playing with inconsistent technique. It comes right down to the basics and the fundamentals of how you play, how you hold the stick, what kind of stick height you have, and that's got to go straight from player to player to player. I would start right away with trying to fix their grip and also their motion of their stroke. Make sure they're not playing differently from each other. This can apply to drumline in marching band or can apply to any of your percussionists in your concert percussion section. You should see a consistent technique. Unifying the stroke and the hand position is really important. If the players are playing with good hand position and they're not kind of just playing in kind of a random fashion, it really makes a difference in the sound. And also, how's their stroke? If there's one guy's playing very armsy and the other one's playing very wrist heavy, you're going to see a big variety of sound difference. Generally, the better percussion sections will be using their wrists a little bit more, keeping lower stick height, bringing up the accents, but keeping everything lower. When they're more inconsistent, you'll see some players playing a little bit more armsy and a little bit louder, and other ones playing a little bit lower, and then you don't have a unified sound. So get consistent to clean that up. The second big thing that can make a percussion section sound sloppy is if they have a weak internal pulse. Super important that percussionists who are in charge of the beat more than any other section have to understand the inner pulse whenever they're playing. Often students are not counting internally, so this is important that we fix that. They need to count out loud. They need to not just count their part, but they should practice incorporating the subdivision when they do count. You can start in lessons with a metronome. 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 1 E and a 2, and 3, and a 4. It's also really important to have the students count and sing their parts in band. So they can count it out loud, 1 E and a 2, and a 3 and while the band's playing, or they can sing their parts on a basic syllable. Ta 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 ta. This will allow them to listen to everyone else in the band and see how their parts fit in. But once they combine that feeling of understanding the inner pulse and then how that pulse fits in with the band music or the orchestra music, they'll be able to lock in not only with the band better, but also with their own section a lot better. One way to get all your players in your section to really focus on pulse is to kind of divide up the percussion section into 3 different groups. Kind of think of it like a drum line where you might have bass drums, you might have snare drums, and maybe quads. But they can play on any instrument. The idea is you're going to have one group playing just straight quarter notes. And have them do maybe 8 on each hand. Then from there, one of the other groups is going to, in between those quarter notes, they're going to play their 8th notes. And then have the third group and what'll happen, they're going to play 16th notes at the same time the other 2 groups are playing quarter notes and 8th notes. Then you kind of like volleyball style, you rotate. And you do that every 4 measures or so. And that will get them to lock into the larger beat, the subdivision of the 8th notes, and then the 16th notes of the quarter notes. And then you can vary it from there. You can have one group start with those quarter notes. The other group might do 8th notes. And then the next group, throw in an 8th note, 16th note combination. Etc. Have them rotate that. Go on to, and then in, throw in that rhythm as well. So you're trying all of the combinations of 8th and 16th notes. So vary it up a little bit, create a rotation of the sections, but also rotate that rhythm around as well. This is great to kind of develop that sense of feel and style in a percussionist. It gets them listening to each other. Do that outside of rehearsal, and then when you get to rehearsal, you can even incorporate that into maybe your long tone studies when the band is warming up. Have them do one of those exercises. And then that way it really kind of gets them keyed into focusing on that before you get into the meat of the music. Another major reason why your percussion section may sound messy is your percussionists may not all have defined roles throughout rehearsal. Often you'll see percussionists in the back sitting and not playing in a piece of music, and that's a recipe for disaster. And it's just not fun. And you want to have them learning just like every other student in the band. You don't want them just sitting and just waiting. I know there's lots of music that don't have enough percussion parts for all of your percussionists, but you can solve that. You can have them double on certain instruments, whether that be mallet instruments or an extra snare drummer or whatever you need to do, but they always should be active in the educational process. They will be more engaged throughout rehearsal, and they will take more ownership and responsibility. Think of it like they're your pit crew. Have them be in charge of every facet of what they do back there. Organizing their mallets, getting every piece set at the beginning of rehearsal, making sure the triangle is set, everything they need, the tambourine is where it needs to be. Have them take pride and value in the art of being a percussionist and flowing from piece to piece and instrument to instrument. Work with them, give them responsibility, help them to develop that responsibility, and your section will definitely improve. The next major reason why your percussion section may sound messy is overplaying. This is a very common thing because it can be a lot of fun to play loud and big. The more students play loud in the percussion section, we often get this muddy sound, and there's not a lot of clarity. So most of the time when I hear percussionists that are playing really well, but they're just not having that clean sound, it's because they're just playing too loud. Have them bring that volume halfway down. They'll be able to listen to each other better, which will develop their pulse and their whole section feel. And then at the same time, they're going to be listening to parts of the band they may not have really noticed before. They'll develop their musicality. And that's super important in your percussion section, that we are teaching not just drummers and percussionists, we're teaching young musicians. And so the more sensitive and musically sensitive they are, and more controlled they are, the better your section will sound. When it's time to play loud, let them go. But make sure they understand that they have to show contrast, even at an early age, in order to be truly musically expressive. The last thing that can cause your percussion section to sound messy is they're trying to do too much at one time. Sometimes focusing on too many things all at once can cause the percussionist to kind of lose focus on what the main thing they're working on that day is. So, for example, you got to remember, percussionists, they're dealing with many different things. For example, they're dealing not only with different instruments, they're sharing instruments, they switch between pieces. They're also dealing with different mallets. They have to change mallets within a piece. And then when they change pieces, they're going to totally different instruments, totally different mallets. And then they have a lot of other things to think about as well, where the sheet music's going to go. Do they have enough music stands for where they're at, for both to read the music and also to hold their mallets? So just be aware there's a lot of things they have to think about. And once they get into the actual playing in rehearsal, it's really good to get the section sound as if you're focused on one thing at a time. I'll give you an example. I might talk to my percussionist about we need to really focus primarily on attacks today because our attacks just quite aren't right. We might do that for a little bit, and then once they start feeling good and we see throughout the rehearsal that they are keeping that as a focus, then we may go to something else. A release, for example, is really important to have, whether that be lifting the foot pedal on the vibraphone with the band, whether that mean muffling the timpani at the right time with the band. Listening, being a good musician and listening, is the band playing short notes Are they ringing and sustaining at the end towards this release, and trying to match with the band? Remember, we're building skills so that they can make those musical decisions on their own. Also dynamics. Sometimes we might want to say, okay, we've worked on this today, and the next day we're going to work on dynamics, and that's the big thing. And one of the things, of course, a tried and true technique is to ask the players, hey, when you're playing, I want you to listen to the trumpets, and I want you to kind of get an idea of what they're playing. Or you can say, do you know what the flutes are doing when you're playing this particular section here? And then you go through it again. Now what they're going to do is they're going to listen more, and you'll probably notice they'll stop overplaying. They'll play a lot softer. They'll try to groove it within the sound of the section, but also within the band, the rhythm of the band, the style of the band, and the dynamic of the band. So as you teach them to be a better listener, they're going to be a better player. When they start focusing on too many things at one time, it gets a little disorganized on where their attention goes. So we want to focus them on one single skill at a time in that rehearsal. And when you feel like they've accomplished that pretty well, we go on to the next one. So just remember, try not to overload your percussionists with thinking about too much at one time. And just to sum it up, all you have to do as a director is to focus on one of these things that I've talked about today at a time. Make sure that you don't get overwhelmed with trying to fix it all at once. So just stay on with one thing at a time and just try that. Maybe one rehearsal, maybe a couple rehearsals, and see if that improves. Then you can build on it from there. We have lots of rehearsals with our students. We have lots of opportunities to explore whatever concept that we're trying to focus on. So don't try to overload yourself too much. Just do one thing at a time with them, and you're going to see dividends. I guarantee it. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did like it, please feel free to like and subscribe, and feel free to share it with a colleague that might find it beneficial as well. And feel free, if you have some good comments yourself, leave those comments in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it.